So I've been continually struck by the Russian attitude towards others, the dehuman, dehumanizing way that they approach things, the objectifying way that they want to use these people for their purposes or destroy them. And it comes through in this video. This was just posted a couple of days ago, but it was apparently a Russian Media Monitor archive. And so it's not necessarily a recent thing, but it still gives you the sense that I'm trying to get a, now this is a Russian lawmaker saying that 2 million Ukrainians have to die. Like he does the math and says, well, they're not fixable. Let's just kill them. And before that, he's talking about nuking the United States. So let's listen to what he has to say and just think through how he's processing. It's on Russian state media for a reason. Like this is being put forward as if it's an okay kind of thing. Remember, Russia controls all media and they want their own narrative to go forward. Special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor for putting this out there, and let's see what he has to say. Remember, this is a Russian lawmaker saying this. I will completely tell you that to destroy the entire east coast of the United States, 2 Sarmat missiles are necessary. 2 missiles for the west coast. There will be 4 missiles and there will be nothing left. They think the mushroom will be taller than a high-rise. The mushroom will be visible from Mexico. Guys, you're so funny. What methods are they even using? They're trying to raise the stakes. Now, this is what Russia is doing, trying to raise the stakes by nuclear saber-rattling and fear-mongering. The United States isn't going, you know what? You better be careful because if you misstep and we're going to nuke you, they're not doing that. You only hear that from the Russian side, and then you hear Russian repeaters talk about how dangerous nuclear war might be. So it's not the US doing that. Are we supposed to object to that? We shouldn't fall for it. Now look in the background here. You see 70% of adults worried about nuclear weapons. The source is a CBS News poll. So we're talking about 70% of Americans are worried about nuclear weapons at this particular point in time. We're just explaining that their calculations are off. Here's how you need to calculate. Don't delude yourselves. What should be said is that there will be nothing left. No one harbors any illusions about it. That everyone will be fine in case of a nuclear war. No one will be fine, but calculate it correctly. So wait a minute. You were just talking about how you should be sending nukes to destroy the United States, although no one will be fine. I think that includes you, who would be destroyed in the exchange, and that's okay? Like, where are you going with this? There was a good example in your earlier broadcast that despite all of the Nazification, books, etc., and cutting off Russian TV channels in Ukraine, 40% of Ukrainians are against tearing down World War II monuments. Okay, so 40% are against tearing down these monuments. Now, he's talking about Soviet monuments, and he's talking about that for a reason, because anything anti-Soviet is considered Nazi. That's the way that they have talked about this kind of thing. Now, it's really interesting. Let's set aside the percentages for now, but let's look at what's going on in Russia, where it's not tearing down World War II monuments, but it's tearing down memorial markers to the victims of Stalin. Yeah, that's really happening. Okay, here I just saw this 3 days ago, 4 days ago, on the wall of the apartment building at number 10 Beloshy Gnevsky Lane in central Moscow. A paper sign commemorates the life and death of Trofim Yurikovich, a professor who was born in 1891, arrested in March of 1938, and summarily executed on July 10th of the same year. This is a replacement for an approved plaque that was destroyed by vandals. The notice reads, "Have a conscience." Right? Wow. So the people that were killed by Stalin, uh, the plaques to commemorate them are disappearing magically. What's going on? This isn't a coincidence. We understand perfectly why this is happening. There is a new reality here compared to 10 years ago when the project started. Everyone understands what's going on and why this is happening at this moment. Stalin's reputation has been steadily rehabilitated under President Vladimir Putin, a former KGB operative. This last line says, journalists have documented at least 11 cases in recent months in which monuments to victims of Stalinist repressions in which millions were killed or had their lives torn apart, were dismantled, or substantially altered. So that's what's going on there. But it gets even better. Listen to this paragraph above it. Civil society activists report that 110 monuments to Stalin, including 22 full-scale statues, have been erected in Russia. 95 of them, 95 of 110, since Putin came to power. Like, get that. 95 out of 110. Now, Stalin was a bad guy. He killed millions of his own people and millions more of others, the Ukrainians and others. It's really bizarre that this guy is complaining about tearing down World War II monuments, and at the same time in Russia, they're putting up monuments to Stalin. Now, I've been to Lithuania, to a place in Lithuania where they collected all the Soviet-era monuments and they put them in one place. It was called like the Park of Statues or something along those lines. And the Lithuanians get it. They don't want these things in their city squares, but they didn't want to just topple them and destroy them and forget about them. They wanted to put them somewhere where you go, you know what? Remember, this is bad stuff. You don't want to do this kind of thing. And this is Marx and Engels. Here's Lenin. Here's Stalin. And here's another bust of Stalin. And at the gate of the entrance, like where you first come in, this is what you come through. The entrance to the park, it feels like a gulag. I mean, that's what it's intentionally supposed to feel like, because if you do what you're going to get this kind of result when you get this kind of leadership. And it was just a very powerful time when I saw that. Okay, so he's upset about World War II monuments coming down in Ukraine. 36% of the population are neutral, he says. They're neutral only because they're afraid. 3/4 of Ukrainians are against tearing down monuments. I'm not sure that his facts are correct. I think if they're monuments to the Soviets, they're probably more like 9/10 are for it across Ukraine. There's generational hatred that has happened here, and it's an unforced error on the part of the Russians because of the way that they treated the Ukrainians by invading. They didn't need to do that, and now there was a 20%, 30%, let's say, percent of the Ukrainian population that was pro-Russian, that has dwindled down to single digits at this point. Only 19% support it. Well, I'm not sure. If we reinstall their brains correctly, 12 to 15% will also believe it shouldn't be done. If we reinstall their brains correctly, like listen to the way that he talks about them, how he dehumanizes them. Okay, so the maximum of 5% are incurable. Simply put, 2 million people, which are ready to recreate the SS. Azov is fascist SS. Ukraine's armed forces are Wehrmacht. That's the German army. Those 2 million people should have either left Ukraine or to be Nazified, which means to be destroyed. Okay. So look how, cavalierly he's willing to follow the lead of these guys and just say, you ought to destroy them. They don't deserve to live. They ought to just be exterminated. Now, I find it really fascinating because the way that he thinks about people is just completely the opposite of the way that we should. The way that I, for example, teach things in class. I showed this video, and this isn't about Ukraine, but it's about a very different way of thinking about how people operate. Guy's name is Bob Chapman. He's a CEO of an American corporation, and he wrote a book called Everybody Matters. I showed this video in class the other day. I'm just going to show you a 2-minute clip of this video where he's talking about how it struck him about how he should treat his employees. Let's listen to this.
Not just the shareholders. Let me go through a couple of the defining moments in my journey to understand this leadership, because it did not come from my education or my awareness of what's going on in this country. And it began with something that many of you will relate to, a wedding. I was sitting in a wedding, enjoying the splendor of this father walking this precious daughter of his down the aisle, and everybody enjoying how beautiful she looked and how proud the father looked. You can all imagine that. And when they got up to the altar, he took the hand of this young lady, his daughter, and he gave it to this young man and said, I give this young lady to be wed to this young man. Her mother and I give this daughter to be wed. Now, any of you who are parents who talked about the importance of their children know that is the ceremonial words they use, but that is not what was in the head and heart of that father and mother right then. What was in their head and heart was, look at young man, I'm going to trust you with this precious human being that her mother and I brought into this world. We have given her unconditional love, and I expect you, through your union, to continue to allow her to be and grow to be whatever she was meant to be. That is what I expect of you. And what I got from that is the realization is that all 7,000 of our team members were just as precious as that young lady. Every one of our team members was brought into this world by some mother and father who hoped the best for this precious young child that they brought into this earth. And that we as leaders, when we allow somebody to walk in our organization, we have an obligation as stewards of that life to continue to allow that life to be everything they were meant to be that we possibly can towards our common vision. Whether they walk in the gate of this Air Force base or they walk in our organization. So I walked away saying, we can have a dramatic impact on this world if we accept the responsibility for that life that joined our organization and shared our gifts.
Okay, so what a contrast between everybody is somebody's precious child, and this means to kill 2 million, 2 million or so. Just get rid of them because they're going to be perpetually trouble. Wow. For me, this is civil war, unfortunately. This is civil war. No, it's not civil war. Civil war is between the country. This is an invasion of your country into another country, so that's just normal war. It's not even a special military operation. It's war. It's an invasion by a foreign entity. That is the problem. It hurts my heart because Russians are fighting Russians. No, that's not it. Russians are fighting Ukrainians who might have spoken Russian but no longer choose to. Like it was during our Civil War. 10 million were laid down for no reason, and the West and allies wanted to partition Russia. Well, okay, so that wasn't actually a thing. Nobody was trying to partition Russia, but it's looking increasingly like a better idea all the time because what you're doing has been so toxic. I'm not saying you should. I don't know that that's a good plan, or bad plan, or whatever, but nobody was arguing for that. And on February 23rd, before you actually did what you did, nobody was really paying all that much attention to you or caring that much about you. The West wasn't that into you. Are things any different now? They push people against each other to make 10 to 15 countries out of Russia. So it never poses a problem for them. And to do the same to Ukraine, they will not succeed. Okay, that's his final conclusion. There's a striking absence of personal responsibility, not personal responsibility, of Russia's responsibility for what Russia has done by invading Ukraine. And I'm so struck by the terrible way in which they think about human beings. Like, look, just contrast what he had to say versus what Chapman had to say. We just need to exterminate 2 million. Everyone is somebody's precious child. Everyone, including those people that are fighting and dying every day in Ukraine, is somebody's precious child. All right, that's all that I had for this video. Thank you for your time and your attention. I hope that helped you think through some things and add some context. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.